an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 1, Episode 18. Paula needs to get over Josh. In this episode, where to start? I'm going to call this episode Everybody Being Precisely Who We Knew They Were. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. First of all, I want to thank Megan for commissioning this episode. I am just, guys, this finale. I was really not sure how the show was going to handle this whole thing. And throughout, I was watching this with Owen, and he was really concerned as well, because neither of us really like her and Josh together, but we're not like thrilled about her and Greg either. And they really nailed like a way to end this that feels like it addresses both dudes not being great options. This was masterful. This finale was like, it was so good and so like character driven in a way that is, it's a little depressing in a way because it's so realistic about how much of a change we are really able to make, at least on the first try, to our learned behaviors and patterns. Everybody throughout this episode, it feels like they are really doing their best to try to be different and better, and then inevitably falling back into the same damaging patterns and shitty behavior that they have been called out on, despite knowing in their gut that shouldn't be what they're doing. But they're all letting fear overtake them or impulse overtake them, depending on who they are. And it is just so true. I'm not somebody who doesn't believe that people can really change. I think they can, but I think it takes so much more effort than we like to admit. I think it takes so much more focus and constant awareness than we want to admit. You know, this is what happens when you grow up on media that addresses large life changes with montages. We want life to be that way. We want to have a montage that represents all of the work and growth that we don't have to sit and watch, that we don't have to like go through with the person and really feel how much work that was. We just want the change, and we want to be able to enjoy the transformation afterward. And I like the fact that this show is like, no, we're going to show you how many tries it's going to take before anybody really begins to learn things, and that you can have learned part of your lesson and still not really implement it. You can have like gotten the picture about a general thing, really seem to have internalized it and understood the lesson, and still go around and fuck up again anyway. Those things are not like mutually exclusive at all. And yeah, you know, that's life. That's growth or not. That's how it works. Learning lessons isn't some magical switch that gets thrown that you suddenly know better now and are just going to do better now. It is a constant effort that needs to be renewed like every second. It's a lot. As somebody who is like always trying to change things about the way that I am, it's exhausting. It is. It's just like, it's very tiring. And I can completely understand why some people just kind of don't feel like it, you know? So, all right, let's start this episode. Y'all, we start off in 1995 in a little Rebecca's bedroom and she's playing with some like neighbor kid or friend. I don't know. There are a lot of like Broadway billboard, what do you call it? Broadway, programs like in frames on her wall. One of them is like, it just says thanks for nothing with like a broken down little teddy bear on it. It's a weird thing. I'm like, did she make these? Or are these supposed to be like real plays in world or what? But she's talking to this little boy and she's trying to get him to play the prince that comes and rescues the princess. And she is obsessed with this song that comes up over and over again this episode. And it is really too bad that it comes up over and over again because it is the worst song. It's awful. So yeah, she's talking to this boy and she's trying to tell him how to rescue her. She's like giving him flat out instructions on all of the steps that it's going to take. And then she's talking about the song from the movie Slumberland. And she starts to sing, in one indescribable instant. Yeah, guys. This is one of those things that I feel like I don't really relate to it in the sense that I expected somebody to swoop into my life this way myself. Either as a kid or once I was like dateable or an adult. But I do think that we all have our little idea of what love looks like. And we have like these little sort of signs that we're looking for people to say a certain thing or respond a certain way that we imagine are like the secret sign that that's the one. And it's really kind of amusing because like I've gotten older and I still kind of like think that there are signs that we can look for that tell us, but it is just amazing how much we can lie to ourselves. And looking back, we realize the signs weren't there, but because we just kind of want to be with somebody, we pretend that, oh yeah, no, they said this thing or they did this thing. And we just like tell ourselves whatever we need to in order to be in this romance that's like not really good for us. So we come back into the present and Greg is there and he's thankfully talking to Rebecca about how he left that date the moment that he found out that she was in the hospital. And she tells him that she made up all of her dates as well. Or not as well. His was real. But she made up all of hers. All 8 of them. And they get interrupted as Paula comes in. And Paula essentially flips out on Rebecca. Now, on the one hand, I 100% understand being really enraged that she would lie to you when you're not really sure why she did it. That's the thing that I don't really understand Rebecca's motivation there. All I can say is and I think I might have said this last episode, is that I get the sense she is feeling a little bit like she wants to put more distance between her and Paula. And that was the only way that she knew how to do it. And it's kind of ironic because, like, if that's true, she is also trying to stay friends with Paula by, like, bringing in other hobbies, like with the pie baking contest thing. So it's like she doesn't want to not be friends anymore, but she wants to put distance between Paula and her love life specifically, I guess. And it is uncomfortable. This whole scene is really uncomfortable. She calls Greg sarcastic, alcoholic, unromantic. She's not wrong. Now, I have to be honest with you guys. I didn't know that Greg was an alcoholic. That seems like underlined a lot this episode in a way I didn't feel like came across in others. I know that he's a bartender because she calls him a booze hound last episode or the one before. And I was kind of surprised by that in that episode because I was like, is he really? We've seen him drink, but I didn't really feel like we ever saw him just get completely wasted, except for like at her weird housewarming party, which, you know, that's fine. But Megan says he does do his studying at a bar. Yeah, I guess that's true. That's one of those things where I'm like, if you are not like free during the hours that a coffee shop is open, but you don't want to be sitting alone in your house studying, I could kind of understand that. Like, you just wanting to get out, and the only places that are going to be open on weird off hours are bars. But I might be making too many excuses for him. I just didn't feel like I knew this about him, so it came as a bit of a surprise this episode. I don't know. Because even when we see him at the bar, he's being a prick, but he doesn't seem drunk. And I didn't really get the feeling that he was overdoing it particularly. So this is like the one thing that I kind of didn't feel was like laid out real well this season. But it's fine. It doesn't really matter that much. And Paula, like, she's in the middle of this conversation, and there is a combination like of her yelling at Rebecca and Josh and Greg running into each other in the hallway. And it is a perfect moment because Josh is carrying a gorgeous bouquet of Stargazer lilies. And that's a bouquet that easily must have cost him like $30-40. Josh is carrying like a $3 Mylar balloon that says she's with Jesus now. It has a little stick at the bottom. And these, I think, the two of them in this moment represent two different parts of a lot of our personalities. I don't think this is like necessarily, because Rebecca is funny and she likes goofy stuff. I think she falls much more on the romance scale, and I think that's the point of this episode. But I am somebody who I love romance in its way, but I'm also extremely cynical about people doing things that are labeled, quote, romantic that they didn't actually think up themselves. I want things to be thoughtful and like meaningful to me and the person doing it, and not something that they just like saw on Pinterest, or, you know, they know that it's expected that you do red roses and chocolates at Valentine's. And so that's what they get me, even though I do not like red roses. You know, this is the kind of like danger zone that I fall into, where I'm like, yeah, I like romance, but also you need to work. I'm high maintenance. Get used to that. And these two, it's like, obviously Josh is really nailing it here. This is a moment of, I want Greg to get it, that there are times and places for this kind of like silliness. The perfect, I think, handling of this: buy a gorgeous bouquet and stick that balloon in it. That's what you do. You do something that is actually romantic, and you add a funny touch to it that's easily removable. That is something that can be enjoyed separately as its thing, but is not the thing. And this is just one of those, like, it is really hard to watch the two of them going head to head and feel like you don't like either of them. And I'm really curious, you guys, anybody who's listening to this who was really rooting for one over the other, I want to hear from you. I want to hear that who you were rooting for and why. Because, like I've said, I don't think either of them is a good choice here. I think she needs to be with somebody who is not on this show yet. And I don't know, you know, what's the name of the dude Trent, who broke into her house? Like, no, he's obviously not somebody who's like great with boundaries and consent. So no, but also he was like a huge snob who put in a ton of effort. And in that way, I kind of feel like he was perfect for her. So yeah. And Greg like gets really confrontational with Josh about like, why are you even here when you're just her friend? And he's like, yeah, she's my friend and she's in the hospital. And I got her this amazing bouquet and you got her a stupid balloon. This confrontation is really telling. Greg says, I know you two had a kind of momentary tongue connection, but Rebecca isn't into you anymore. She's with me now. And I love when he says it and he gets this look on his face like he can't even believe he's saying it. Like it's just such a moment of like, oh shit, she is. And he looks so happy. So maybe you should take those flowers back to your girlfriend who you haven't been able to commit to for over 15 years. Guys, I don't feel like I don't feel like I knew that Josh and Valencia were together for 15 years. I had it in my head it was like 7 or something. Is it 15? Like, even if it's 7, I'm still deeply understanding her vibe at the end of this episode. But if it is 15, wow, girl, you kind of have nobody to blame but yourself at this point. You could have drawn a line in the sand at a decade, but you know, whatever. Let's see. Megan says, I think I was rooting for Greg mostly because he is super into her and not confused about it. I understand that. I see what you mean, Megan. Erica says, I might have been rooting for Greg too, but that's because I have weird, confusing sex dreams about him. Megan says, but my husband is Filipino, so I kind of also root for Josh. Erica says, in episode 2, Josh tells Valencia that he dated Rebecca when he and her were on a break in high school. Oh, wow, Erica. I definitely missed that. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I completely missed that. Wow. All right. So yeah, he says, this is not about me and Valencia. And Greg just says, okay, sure. And Josh kind of blinks at that and gives him the bouquet to give to Rebecca on his behalf and says, but get used to me being her friend because Rebecca and I are close and there's nothing you can do about that. And we have a history, whether you're with her or not, we're connected. And Greg says, well, it doesn't bother me and I don't care. And it doesn't bother me. Also a weird thing to say. And it doesn't bother me. Also circling back, you have a girlfriend. The both of them are handling this very badly. So let's go to Paula listing the things that she has done for Rebecca. This is a real Rebecca's like guilt-tripping Jewish mom, except Paula, her supposed best friend at the moment. And she winds up totally laying out the insanity. She put a tracker on Josh Chan's mom's car. Now, I asked in that episode, how did she know Josh's mom is going to be at the grocery store? I'm almost positive. I specifically wanted to know that. And I love the fact that the show is like, oh, we have our side notes here that tell us exactly how she knew. We won't be sharing that with you yet, but promise we have considered and thought this through and know the answer to the question. And wow, this is insane. She hit like, oh yeah, how did you just magically bump into Josh's mother at the market? And I know where that woman is every hour of the day. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I have done things for you that you can't even imagine. Things that would make your head spin, and I did it for you. Rebecca says, I didn't ask you to do any of those things. And this is when Paula closes the doors and begins to sing her song about how it's time for her to shut up. Now, Rebecca, I believe, is right to say, I didn't ask you to do anything like this. Was Paula being, like, if we're looking at this purely as how effective is Paula at wingmanning Rebecca, R.E., Josh Chan, then yes, obviously, Paula gets top marks everywhere, bordering on maybe you should be teaching the class. But also, again, her level of crazy outpaces Rebecca a considerable amount. And Rebecca is the titular crazy ex-girlfriend. So Paula, maybe look at that. I had been saying last 4 episodes that I was concerned about Paula and her like unwillingness to let this go. And it turns out that I was way more right than I knew even. And her getting so angry at Rebecca for not appreciating her is just, it's understandable, but you also are getting way too, you're letting your own life suffer, probably, for the sake of this person who did not ask you to do this stuff. You don't really get to complain when they don't appreciate it the way you want them to appreciate it. That's not up to you. That's what happens. It's like Paula was kind of like giving Rebecca a gift, and Rebecca chose to do something other than what Paula thought she should do with it. It's like lending somebody money. You lend somebody money, and sure, you may lend it to them for a particular thing and think that that is your agreement. But really, when it comes down to it, when you give somebody money to borrow, you don't get any say in what they do with it. Like, you may intend for it to be a thing, but if you want it for that thing, then you pay for that thing. Like, if you're like, I'm giving you money for school, well, maybe you should pay for their semester outright. If it is so important to you that it goes to directly to what you want it to go to, maybe just buy that then. But this just reminds me of fights I have seen. I have never borrowed money from friends. I've always been like really uncomfortable with that whole concept. But I have seen this kind of fight where a friend is like, I lent them such and such money and they acted like they couldn't afford XYZ, but now they're going on a trip and they haven't paid me back. And if they agreed to a certain time frame to pay you back in and they haven't, that's one thing. But if they're just not living the way you think they should live, or doing exactly what you think they should do after you lend them money, that's none of your business. Like, you can steam over there all you want and be like cranky about it all you want, and you have the right to feel how you feel, but you don't get to like go up to them and accuse them of shit or like make them feel guilty about it or anything, unless those things were stipulations in the agreement of lending the money in the first place. And that's what the vibe I have on Paula. She has decided to do all of this stuff of her own accord. Has Rebecca reaped the benefits? Yes, she has. Undeniably so. But Paula didn't need to do that. She was not asked to do that. And in choosing to do that on her own without involving Rebecca or asking her if this is what she wanted, she has to accept that maybe Rebecca's not going to handle everything exactly the way that she wants her to. That's part of the deal. It's part of being friends. And that's what Daryl says to her later on, finally. He's just like, you think that like telling people what to do and them listening to you is what being a friend is? No. And that's like, Paula is really much more about being Rebecca's surrogate mom. And that's not to say that we don't have friendships like this, where somebody feels like, either because they're genuinely like much older than you, like Paula is with Rebecca, or because they just sort of seem to have their life together in a different way or whatever. You can have people that represent a parental figure in your life. And I don't feel like that's an inherently unhealthy thing. But I want Paula to recognize that's what's happening here and face that a little bit. And she finally seems to. But, does she? We'll see. So she ends with telling Rebecca that she doesn't want to talk to her about any of this ever again. And says that if you are trying to pretend that you are over Josh, then you are fooling yourself. And she walks out and slams the door behind her, leaving Rebecca looking extremely distraught. So Rebecca gets home from the hospital. She's with Greg. And I think that she expected him to hang around with her. He says something about how she really needs to rest. And I think she thought that meant like, we're going to take a nap together, or why don't you lay down and like take a nap and I'll make you something to eat when you wake up, or I'll like be here or whatever. And he's kind of like, gaslighting is a strong word. because she's asking him, like, what's the deal? You're acting really weird. And he's saying, what, me? No, you're the one that's all over the place. You're the weirdo. Gaslighting, I feel like, is much more intentional. It's when somebody's like telling you shit didn't happen that they fucking know happened. With Greg, I don't feel like that word's appropriate because I don't think Greg is even in touch enough with what is going on in his own head to quite realize that he's completely in denial, you know? But yeah, it's awful to watch this moment where it feels like he should be there for her and she knows that, and he just is like, I'll text you later, and just runs out of the house. And the next scene is him with his dad, and his dad's like, why did you run out like that? And he says, I just realized that she always goes back to Josh, and I'm the guy that she settles for. And his dad says, but she chose you. You guys have sex like 50 times a day. And he's like, why do I tell you stuff that? And he says, hey, you got issues, kid, which I find so funny. I love that so much. And he says that caring on him is very unattractive, that caring will ruin everything. I chased after her for months, no interest from her. I finally forced myself to stop caring, and that's when she was into me. That's what she likes, the not caring. And his dad is laughing at him. Like, I really enjoy his dad. His dad is like the MVP of this entire episode. This fucking Josh telling himself this, I mean, it's understandable in a way, especially in a world where being hard to get is seen as desirable. One man never ever is gettable. Like, okay, I kind of see why you would think this, but also literally what about her behavior in the past few days has indicated to you that she isn't serious about like being with you? That's the main thing. If it felt like there were moments where he cared and acted like he cared and she suddenly was kind of like, oh, you're so pathetic, and he was picking up on that, then okay. But he's just projecting this entire, huge scenario on her. And it's just, his dad is like, you're just afraid she's going to hurt you again. And he's like, I just need to be like the uncaring bad boy. And his dad just stares at him and says, oh my God, you're an idiot. And I love it so much. So cut to Josh. Valencia is wearing white to the wedding. I shouldn't be surprised. Like, I really shouldn't. It's so funny, guys. As you can see on this video right now, I look pretty good in white. Wedding dress won't be white. So anybody coming to my wedding, feel free to wear white. I will not care. But I just like, it's just such a rule. Just Valencia. Fuck. I'm surprised she didn't wear her fucking wings for the Maxim shoot that she did. This whole thing comes down to Josh telling her, look, I know that you have waited a long time and that you have ideas on where our relationship is going. And I am going to go shop for rings, but I need you to let me do this my own way. And she agrees to allow him to take his time and figure it out. But in the end, jumping ahead, she tells him, because he's really pissed at the fact that she didn't let him do it his way. Now, guys, on the one hand, I kind of get what he means when he's like, I asked you specifically and you didn't let me. Yes. That would be understandable if you'd been dating 3-4 years and she didn't let you do it your way. 15 years, buddy, you had every chance to try and do this your way. I'm really not that mad at her about this. I'm not. Her saying, oh, well, I was just kind of like not sure that you were actually going to do it in the end. Yeah. Why wouldn't you be afraid of that? Just because you had this conversation about it that made it sound like he was way more serious. I bet they've had this conversation before. Like, maybe not quite as explicit because she does like the fucking 50-yard line, or no, touchdown. That's a 100-yard line, right? What's a touchdown? She does that dance. So it does feel like they haven't explicitly been like, I am going to propose to you before. But Josh, you've had your chance, and her being paranoid that you don't really mean it, understandable to me. It really is. And granted, him saying like, you didn't listen to me and you never listened to me. I mean, it seems like that is a pattern in their relationship, but I can't help but feel that when you are as immature and prone to like impulsive decisions as he is a lot of the time, it's like natural that somebody is going to be hovery and like constantly worried that you're not up to it. And that's why I've been saying that the two of them need to split up as well, because she's falling into that, like that role of the woman who's constantly always in control of everything while the man baby doesn't know what's going on. And that's just like such a fucking trope in so many relationships. It's not just a TV thing. This is like reality. And as much as Valencia can be insufferable, I feel like this life, the two of them together, is like a Ron and Hermione situation. Not that she's like super smart and like, you know, on top of everything like Hermione, but more that she is high maintenance, knows precisely what she wants, thinks she's being very clear about it, which I have to agree. And he is simply failing to exert minimum effort while she is on 100 all the time. And yeah, so what's going on with the two of them and the way that she reacts, like she winds up getting in cahoots with one of his aunts, and his aunt brings this like family heirloom, this ring, to the wedding, and tries to behave as if it's this spur of the moment. Oh, it just occurred to me. I wanted to hand this down. We're at this romantic event anyway. Valencia looks so beautiful. Why don't you just propose now? And he stops and like looks over at Valencia, who's clearly watching them, and is like, what? And then he realizes that like she set this all up. But again, I'm not as mad at her as I feel like maybe I should be, or as the show wants me to be, or maybe the show doesn't, because there are times where Valencia is presented as just the worst. And then there are times where I feel like we really get where she's at. And I guess it's a pretty balanced place to be. You can have a character that you don't really like and still sort of sympathize with. And I like that being pretty nuanced, you know? So anyway, I just wanted to, oh, Rashawn's here. Hey, lady. She gets sent home from work sick. Oh no. The aunt did the singing voice for Milan and Jasmine oh, Megan. I meant to ask that at the top of the episode, actually, because I got the vibe that she was somebody from the way that she was like dropped into the show. It felt like she was a cameo of some kind. But if she did the singing voice for them and they were cartoons, nobody would necessarily recognize her, would they? Unless she's been in other stuff and I'm just not aware. I never saw Mulan. But if she sang A Whole New World, she's like an MVP to me, because A Whole New World is one of the best Disney songs ever written, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's so good. It's so good. I love it so much. Just thinking about it right now, I'm like, oh. So, okay. Guys, can we talk about the MVP-ness of neighbor Heather? Because she is able to sit with Rebecca in lounge chairs and talk about Rebecca's issues with her own ex in a completely reasonable, level-headed manner that I feel is borderline superhuman. I appreciate it, and I love the fact that Heather is not gone from the show, because I was a little worried that after this like drama between the two of them, she would be a lot less frequent like in appearance. But I do feel like now we are bordering on the like cool girl who's so cool that it's like not actually attainable. I don't know that I could do this. It's been a very short time. I mean, when Rebecca and Josh kissed, I'm mentally feeling like that was about a week and a half ago. Does that sound right to you guys? Like, they kissed. She found out that they were staying together and tried to like fly to New York in like the same 2-day span. Came home, had her talk with Josh that she was like dumping him, or, you know, he didn't know that, but that's what she was doing. And then like, what, 2 days later, she made out with Greg, maybe. And then they've been having sex for like a week straight. And I feel like we're on a week and a half. That's, I mean, all right, Heather, you know, good for you, but shit, girl, I don't think I could do this. So yeah, she's talking about, Greg, and since you know him super well, I thought you could help me out. It was really sweet. When we got home, he was weird again. And Heather says, yeah, that sounds like Greg. He gets freaked out. Plus you have that weird thing with Josh. And Rebecca's like, he knows that's over though. And then she realizes like, we need a moment where we can really tell each other how we feel about one another. And in essence, I think she's correct until she starts to make it into like, it needs to be a moment. And that's not the same thing. Guys, you know, I have a fucking podcast where I literally just talk about my feelings about things all day. I'm big on conversation to deal with issues and like hash it out. Maybe a little bit too much about conversation, to be honest. As I get older, I'm realizing like I have to de-intellectualize things a little bit sometimes. I was thinking she was going to have him come over and have a glass of wine, and that over dinner they would just be like, listen, I want you to know that I'm really serious about this and I really like you. But what she's picturing is a magic carpet ride in the sky moment, like genuinely. And oh girl, if you're waiting for the perfect moment to have this conversation, good luck. Like, okay. So this leads to her running into Josh Chan's mom and getting herself invited to the wedding despite being kicked out as a bridesmaid, which, by the way, we find out that she was invited as a bridesmaid because Paula put the bug in his mother's ear at a Starbucks. But that's another story. So she gets a new invite to this wedding and agrees to, and gets Greg to agree to go with her as a couple. And she's looking for like a new pair of earrings at the jeweler to wear to the wedding. And she's telling him that she's hoping that this will be the start of a love story. And he says, have you found your Beshert, your soulmate, your destiny? Have you found him yet? And she says to herself, have I found my soulmate? And she turns around just as Josh walks in. Now, look, I can't lie to you guys. If I were mid-sentence saying, have I found my soulmate? And I turned around and Josh had just walked in after everything that had happened, would I think that was a sign? 1,000% I would think that was a sign. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not fucking made of stone, people. Yes, of course I would. You know, like, so I get it, Rebecca. And it turns out he's here to look at rings for Valencia, which leads to like the most painful moment. Guys, I gotta be honest. I haven't felt the kind of chemistry that Rebecca and Josh have in this jewelry store between them for the entire series. And I guess that's on purpose, right? It's supposed to be that Josh is finally starting to realize that he's into her. But I'm feeling it now. Like, I really initially was like, what? Like, they don't seem to go together. What even is the deal? And now I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah, man. It's like electric right now. So yeah, he's just, you know, been thinking about it. It's time. That's really telling. He doesn't say, I've been thinking about it and I really love her and I really like, she's the one. He says, it's time. Like, Fuck, that's depressing. And she says, that's really great and romantic. Congratulations. Oh my God. Congratulations. Yeah. So then we have the getting ready scene where she's singing to a bird. This bird is not on board with whatever it is that she's expecting him to do. It's pretty great. She gets into this like dress, and I gotta be honest, y'all, this dress is fugly. Is that just me? Like, I is the point of the dress to be like a sort of like over the top childlike princess dress, but for grown-ups? Because I thought this dress was god awful. It's like this electric blue. It's just like there's like a one strap is one thing and the other strap is another thing going on, which feels extremely 90s to me. Like the one strap thing was just such a thing in the early 2000s. And all of the like jewels on it and whatnot. And she comes out and like does this like ta-da, and Josh really doesn't have much of a reaction. And he says, I don't know what to say. And she says, am I overdressed? Is this too much? And he says, no, you look all right. And he's like trying to be casual, but it just comes across as really insulting. Plus the fact that he has not dressed up at all, which, guys, that is like a major thing with me and Owen that I appreciate, is that Owen really likes dressing up. It's because he just has to wear jeans and polos for work. So when he gets a chance to dress nicely, he's excited about it because it's not frequent. But man, have I been this girl who has put days of thought into what I'm about to wear. And I roll out and he's wearing something I've seen him in like 60 times. And I'm like, are we really? What? It's so annoying. Erica says, you said Josh instead of Greg a few times this episode. Oops, sorry. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. That like she hasn't accidentally like said Josh's name in bed or something, you know, like, but I'm glad they're not doing that because it's just like a terrible, one of those awful things. But yeah, so Greg is unimpressed, or unimpressive, I should say. And you can tell that she is disappointed, but she's trying to like be a good sport about it and not to put too much pressure on him, despite the fact that she clearly has an idea of what he should be wearing or what she would have liked him to be wearing. And I think there's also an element of just like, I want to get to see you in an outfit that isn't something I get to see you in all the time, because that can be kind of a romantic thing as well, you know, just to like get to see somebody you know well in a different light. So they roll into the wedding and she says how lovely it is and that it's really romantic. And he says, I guess. And when she's like, you don't think so? He says, it's the epitome of Southern California pastiche. A chain motel with vaguely French decor, Italian food being served tapas style while a Filipino girl is marrying a Jewish guy, all with a lightly Arabian Nights style wedding. And I really like appreciate, honestly, that he's saying this, because I was looking around as the camera like pans over the wedding, like trying to get a grip on what they were going for with the look of the thing. And once he like said this, I was like, oh, yeah, that's the problem. Like, there isn't anything specifically going on here. I love, though, that Daryl says the exact same thing later with just nothing but love in his voice and makes it into a wonderful, like, special thing. So Rebecca's trying to sort of flirt with him. And he says, we are way too sober for this wedding. And then asks if she wants some shots. Which, look, I'm not, like, there are weddings you go to and that's what you do. This is a shot wedding. I think you guys all know what I mean when I say that. This is a shot wedding. You get a vibe in your head. You immediately, like, picture maybe a wedding you've been to where you're like, oh, yeah. Yep. That was a shot wedding for sure. Everybody got fucked up. The groom and the bride even got fucked up. It was a disaster. Super fun, but whoa. And then there are weddings like this, champagne weddings. That is what my wedding is going to be. I'm sure that shocks everyone. And she is saying as he walks away, I could also go for champagne, but shots are funny too. Guys, the dialogue in this show is so good. Shots are funny too. Like, that's not what she was going for. Meanwhile, I also want to point out that Daryl is not only delighted by the pastiche of everything, but him and White Josh showed up in tuxes with like these burgundy magenta cummerbunds, and they look amazing and I love them. And I just am so glad that they are so overly dressed. It's great. It's great. It's great. So here we go. Rebecca running into Josh at the wedding and him saying, wow, look at you. And she says, you don't think it's a bit much? And he says, no, you look amazing, like a princess. Exactly what the fuck she wants to hear. And you can see on her face, God, guys, there is nothing worse than this feeling. I have been exactly where she's at, and it's the fucking worst. You are with somebody that you like a lot, that you feel a lot for, and yet they just are missing like major beats about not only the night and the whole vibe of the thing, but like who you are, and they don't seem to like get it. And then you run into another person that you also feel a thing for, and you're like really trying to pretend you don't, and then they say the exact right thing, the exact right way, and with total sincerity, and you're just like, oh God, what is this? Like, y'all, I've been here, and it is really tough. You just like have to, and I admire so much that despite this moment and the moment in the jewelry store, Rebecca is still throughout this episode, I feel, really making an effort to meet Greg more than halfway. She's meeting him 3/4 of the way. Like, Greg isn't putting in effort at all. And it despite these moments of that I could excuse as being like, I would see this as a sign myself were I in her shoes. She isn't just dropping everything and running over to Josh. She isn't like constantly attempting to, it's not like she takes all of this and it changes her in a moment. It's a perfect storm of the way Josh is responding to her versus the way that Greg is not responding to her. And when I say not responding, I mean in every way. He's not responding in that he doesn't get what she wants and what she's after here. He doesn't see the effort she's putting in. But also he is genuinely trying to be don't care guy. So I feel like on some of this, it's, I don't feel like all of his behavior can be put down to trying to be don't care guy. I think a lot of it is genuinely he doesn't function this way naturally, and that dealing with things with sarcasm and humor is really the only, like, all he knows. Being sincere and enjoying things for their beauty in a real way, I don't know if he knows how to do that. And so like, as, you know, I don't know. This is tough. So yeah, he says, this is none of my business, but I have to say something. If you get mad at me, I understand. And he basically is like, are you sure Greg is what you want? He's so sarcastic and dark, and you're not that. You're sweet, and I'm just afraid you're going to get hurt. Now, look, is he like kind of right? Yeah, but like, dude, so not appropriate. No. You are there with your longtime girlfriend that you're planning to propose to. You just kissed this girl a week ago. Kind of think you're being a little bitch, as Father Bra would say. So, yeah, dude. Meanwhile, Greg sees them talking to each other and just immediately jumps to a conclusion. And it's awful because she was very clear with Josh and was like, no, I understand that you're worried about this, but I get him. I think I'm going to be fine. I'm really happy. But Greg sees them talking and assumes that this is like still the drama between the two of them. Now it is on one end, it is from Josh, But he doesn't have faith in Rebecca. And that's really the problem. So she wants to go dance on the dance floor, which leads to one of the worst scenes. Guys, y'all, this is so painful. Him like ironically dancing. He dips her like 6 times in a row. It is awful. I hate it so much. And she eventually is like, let's dance for real now. And he says, oh, you want the real stuff? And he starts to hiss. And she's like, what is, and he says, I'm sizzling bacon. And she's like, let's really dance, dude. Please? Please? For me? And like, looks like borderline, like upset. Like she maybe wants to cry a little bit. Like she's just sad. And he puts his arms around her and she's like, well, that's better. And she says, there's been something I want to say to you tonight. And this is obviously going to be the moment where she explains to him that she really cares about him. And then they get interrupted by the bride and groom's first dance. And they keep on getting interrupted every time she is attempting to say a thing. It is just this whole deal. We have the moment where White Josh is talking to Greg about... Greg is talking about everything except what's going on with Rebecca. And I love him talking about the hoverboard thing and how bored White Josh is about it. You take the board away, mainly what they're doing is leaning. And Josh calls him out. White Josh is like, dude, why are you over here when Rebecca's like literally sitting alone looking kind of sad? What is this? What is this? And he's also putting it away. He's getting more and more sloshed. And then we go to Daryl, who has gone to Paula's place and is just like, dude, literally, what are you doing? Like, why are you not there for her? Rebecca is all alone and really sad and going through some shit. And you're just fucking sitting at home, like being self-righteous. And he tells her that, you know, expecting her to do what you tell her. That's not being a friend. And that seems to really get through to her. She has a moment of just like, oh my God, you know, and I really liked that. We have the moment with Josh and Valencia where the, fake, what's the word? Spontaneous thing like is supposed to happen. And he realizes what's actually going on. Paula comes in and her and Rebecca make up in like a series of talking over each other and being really excited. Josh and Valencia have their confrontation and she walks away, and Rebecca comes over to Greg and says, look, I want to talk to you because this isn't how we are. Something's off track tonight. And I don't know, is it my fault? Because I had an artificial view of how I wanted this night to go. And he's like, no, it's my fault. It's totally my fault. I should not have worn sneakers tonight. Justin Timberlake wore sneakers with a suit. And I thought I was cool, but I'm no J Timbo. And I love her like, just like really sympathetically nodding and smiling as she's trying desperately like not to laugh. And she says, you're hilariously wasted. And he says, I know what you want to say to me. You want to break up with me. And she's floored. And looks at him like, are you kidding me? What do you mean? That is, no. That is not it. What are you talking? Like, I love how shocked she is. And she tells him, I understand that this emotional stuff can be really scary. She's so mature and he fucking blows it. My parents split up. I know that your mom left. We don't have great role models here. But what I've been meaning to tell you is that I really care about you. I'm going to be brave. And I'm going to say that we've only been seeing each other a short time. But, you know, nevertheless. And he responds with, long stare over at Josh. Worst. And you can see his face close up. And she says, so tell me about what you're feeling. And he says, I think that we need to not put labels on anything, is essentially the fucking speech. I think you're cool. And just fucking, we don't need to plan our future. Let's just focus on tonight and have fun, okay? Now, if it weren't for how the two of them know each other already, if they were only dating a couple weeks and she was saying this, I might understand him feeling like this is pretty fast to be saying this, but they've known each other ages now. He has wanted to be with her for ages now. He's finally getting what he wants, and he's being a fucking dope. And I hated this, and I hate seeing, like, her acting in this moment is so good of just being not just hurt, but like genuinely confused, because she thought she knew where they were here, and she did, except he's being dishonest with her. And then he literally lays his head on the bar and passes out. And White Josh comes by and grabs him up. And I really like White Josh MVP here. He fucking loves his friend, but he knows. He says, I'm sorry, he absolutely blew it. I know that he cares, but it's Greg. It's just who he is. Which, girl, run. Like, honestly, man cannot handle his shit. He is still emotionally a child. He needs to go to therapy. He needs to get some like help with his drinking. He needs a lot of work. And men aren't houses. You don't get a fixer-upper and then do construction. They need to do it. So just run. Go. Get out. Meanwhile, Josh has had his like breakup with Valencia, and he comes over to talk to, or he texts Rebecca to meet him outside. And when she goes out to meet him, he like grabs her by the hand. And I don't know what this car is that he has. Is this his car? Because I low-key thought that he maybe stole the like car the bride and groom were meant to drive off in. But yeah, he tells her to come with me. He's got like a leather jacket on even, I think. And oh yeah, it is the bride and groom's car because it says just married on the back. Oh, I was right. Okay, good. And they are sitting looking over the city on the hood of the car as he tells her that he broke up with Valencia. And he's like, I have tried not to think about you, but you know, this is no matter what I do, it's always just, it's like you're with me all the time. And he pulls out the letter from camp, which apparently he carries with him all the time, which she did not know. And then they bang on the hood of the car, which just like, are we doing this? What? Damn. And again, as much as I'm like, girl, what are you doing? Meanwhile, fucking One Indescribable Instant is being sung and it's the worst song ever and I hate it. I'm not like, I get it, Rebecca. I really do. You just had like kind of a heartbreaking night. A guy let you down majorly and this dude that you've wanted forever has swept in and just been perfect. So I'm not like that mad at you, but also like really I am though. And I just love when the camera dodges away and it comes back and Josh is literally like got his shirt off and Rebecca's still in her gown. So it's like very romance covery. It is hilarious. And then the camera like pulls out and they are literally on the flying carpet. And I did not know until this moment that they were literally making a reference to Jasmine because that is who is singing this song. But that's great. And then what happens? Josh wakes up at home. He says, I should have said I love you. And then he vomits. And then Rebecca and Josh are laying together in the back of the car, and she tells him, do you want to know something? I moved here for you. And he gets this look on his face like, wait, what the fuck? And I lost my mind. Perfection. I was sitting there like, how is this going to go? What is the whole next season just going to be like dealing with Greg now? Like what? And then she says this, and you see Josh having the, I made a huge mistake, like look on his face. And I howled. Fucking gorgeous. Just Rebecca fucking her own shit up. She finally gets what she wanted, and she has to ruin it immediately, like right away. If Rebecca isn't all of us, I don't even know. God damn, girl, but you are a disaster. Fuck's sake. This show is so good. Erica says, oh boy, I can't wait for the next episode. So just letting you guys know, next episode, I will not be covering the first episode of season 2. Next episode, Megan requested that I do a wrap up of season 1 and do like a ranking of my favorite songs from the season as well. She sent me, I believe, earlier an email that has like the list of all the season 1 songs, things like that. So that's what the next episode of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend will be, is a wrap up and a chat. Hopefully you guys can come to that. And then the one after will be covering the next episode of the show. So yeah, I am absolutely dying to watch the next one, but I can't. And you all are dead to me, and I hate you. So, I guess that's that. Erica says, I'm going to post some season 1 wrap-up vids in the group, too, like the gag reel and stuff. Oh, nice. Good call, Erica. Oh, and Megan says, please send Natasha questions. I would love that if you guys would be like, if you want me to have predictions about specific things or whatever. I'm very much here for that. I am over time, so I have to go, but this finale was just so much better than I ever thought. It was just so well done. I loved it, and I love this show. It's so good. All right, guys, thank you again so much for hanging out with me and for watching, and I will be seeing you again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.